Our show today is on forgiveness, and my guest is Colin Tipping, author of Radical Forgiveness. His book shows us how to rise above the victim archetype and learn how to find peace in forgiveness. There's nothing worse than feeling used, abused, and taken advantage of, and it's really difficult to get on the other side of those horrible feelings. Colin is the founder of the Institute for Radical Forgiveness, Therapy and Coaching. Welcome, Colin. How are you?
Fine, and thank you for having me on the show.
How did you get into the business of forgiveness?
Well, back in the early 90s, my wife and I were, I was a clinical hypnotherapist, and I was tended to attract people into my practice who had cancer for some reason, and I didn't really know why why I was attracting those people, because I had not had it myself. It was none of it in my family, and yet I seemed to be attracting them and was able to help them. And then I had already gotten an interest in forgiveness early on, especially what the kind of forgiveness that would eventually become radical forgiveness, but the more metaphysical approach to it. But I didn't know that those two things were connected at the time. When we started to do some retreats, 5-day retreats for these people who had cancer or were wanting to prevent a recurrence of cancer or whatever, we discovered that the research showed very clearly that there was a very strong link between the kind of personality that would want to deny their feelings and emotions and not forgive, really, and cancer. There was a very strong link between those two. Causative as well. There was a direct link to show that if you you were kind of personality that repressed your feelings, didn't allow them to be there, you just made nice and pretended everything was fine, when really and truly you were in rage or grief, then you were more likely to get cancer than people who didn't do that, who were able to express their feelings and to come to a place of forgiveness eventually. So that was the reason that I realized why I was being guided, if you like, to do this work, because the two things went so closely together. So that's how we started it. But the issue for me was that with traditional forgiveness or conventional forgiveness, whatever we want to call it, it takes, first of all, most people understand it to be extremely difficult, and it takes forever to do it, if ever it happens at all. And it's, everybody understands it to be something that you have to be a special kind of person to do, almost a saint, to be able to do something, to forgive somebody who's done something really terrible to you. I'm not talking about little things, I'm talking about big things now. And as a measure of how difficult we understand forgiveness to be, those people who actually achieve it end up on TV shows like Oprah and Diane Sawyer and all those kind of things, because it's so rare that anybody who's had something terrible done to them can forgive the person who did it to them in a profound way. So we had to come up with a way that was very quick and very easy and didn't require the person to do any deep therapy work, that it could be an easy step-by-step process and get it done almost immediately. So that's what radical forgiveness does. It's an immediate response. We've developed some tools that help people to go through a very simple step-by-step process that works at a different level than traditional forgiveness. It works at the energy level as opposed to the mental level. So that's how I got into it, and we've been doing it ever since 1998, and we do these workshops around the world. And the book that we're talking about today has been out there now for since 98, so I guess that's almost 12 years, 10 years. And here we are.
I think it's a good time to be talking about forgiveness, because people seem to be getting polarized very, very easily. Mm-hmm. There just seems to be a kind of a loud level of anger, whether it be at governments or the financial world or even in personal relationships.
Uh-huh. Yes, I think we're being challenged to do quite a lot of forgiveness work by what's going on in the world. But it's a constant need to have a way to process what happens to us in life and to process the emotions that go with it, so that we don't become sick through the repression of those feelings and denial of those feelings. And forgiveness is a way that we can create life to happen in a much nicer way, and to feel better about what happens, and to feel more healthy, have better relationships. All those things come about if we learn how to forgive.
Let's start with the beginning of the problem here. What happens to us when we're angry at someone or something and feel that we've been wronged? What happens to us psychologically?
Well, it depends where your mind is. You see, with traditional forgiveness, which is bound up with and very much part of what I call victim consciousness, which is really a way of thinking about the world, is that when things happen to you, you're victimized by them, you're unhappy because of them. In other words, the people that have hurt you are responsible for your unhappiness. And so that is a very unhealthy way of looking at life, and yet it's the way that most people do it, and how we're encouraged to think about life from society and media and politics and everything else, as you just mentioned, this polarity, where we're encouraged to have a victim consciousness. Almost every news program you see on television is about somebody's victim story and how you can identify with them and feel angry. So what happens in the physical body? Well, what happens when we're victimized and we go into the anger and hold on to the anger? That's the difference. We need to feel the anger. We need to feel the feelings, and we need to feel what it's like to be hurt. But to hang out there for the rest of our life is debilitating. And so anger then becomes either deeply repressed and denied, in which case it'll come out as a disease process, or we keep on telling the story over and over again, so it becomes a cycle of anger and resentment over and over again. We keep telling the same old story to anybody who will listen to us to confirm our victim story, and that then just keeps the cycle of anger and rage going. And life is miserable, and we're disempowered because we give our power away to the person who we think is responsible for our unhappiness. So that's what happens to us. It's very toxic. The anger associated with victim consciousness is very toxic, very debilitating, and very disempowering.
When we're in that state, we feel that we're in the right and that somebody else is wrong, that they've done something wrong, so we're blaming them. Why is it so hard to forgive?
Well, because we believe that we've been victimized. That's the whole point. That's why it's so difficult to go through a forgiveness process, because we believe that something wrong happened to us. Now, if we're talking radical forgiveness, it's a totally different mindset. The idea of radical forgiveness, as I've explained it in my book, is that we are asked to be willing to be open to the possibility that what happened to us happened for a reason, and that it was something that our spiritual essence, our spiritual intelligence, if you like, has created for our soul's learning and growing. And therefore, that puts us in a very different frame of mind about what has happened. We still feel the anger, and we still feel the hurt and the pain. Of course we will, because we're human beings. But if we open up to the possibility that there was actually divine purpose in what happened, and that this was, and the events that occurred that seemed to be so painful and were painful, but were completely purposeful from a spiritual point of view, then we allow that energy tied up in the situation, the anger, the pain, the hurt, to dissipate, and we feel a whole lot better. and it's immediate. That's the point about it. It doesn't take years and years like it normally does with traditional forgiveness. As soon as you use the tools, like a worksheet, we have a radical forgiveness worksheet, and we have a 13 steps audio CD that you can use. The minute you use those tools, there's a shift. There's a shift in the energy around not just how you feel, but how the situation actually will present itself from this point on. And the other people in the game are also affected by this energy shift, and they are at choice as to whether to change too, even though they don't even know that you've been doing the forgiveness work.
So there's a divine purpose and reason behind everything that happens, with no exceptions.
Right.
And it's that paradigm from which you begin the process of true forgiveness.
Yes, a radical forgiveness, yes.
It's still difficult to make that next step.
Which is what?
Well, where you actually really believe it.
See, that's the point. See, the point is that you don't have to believe it. The way that it's set up is that you do not have to believe it. What we've managed to do with radical forgiveness is to make these tools such that they appeal not to your mentality at all. They appeal to your spiritual intelligence. Now, that's the part of you that knows the truth. That's the part of you that knows exactly why you're here on this planet. You don't have to know mentally what the lesson is. And because you never will. We don't know the mind of God, so to speak, at this point in time. We don't know the spiritual big picture. But all it requires us to do, and this is what the worksheets do for us, it says, I'm willing to entertain the possibility that there was divine purpose being served here in this situation, and I'm willing to let that be a possibility. Notice I don't even use the word belief. I'm willing to let it be a possibility, and that's enough. So you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to understand it. Your mind will think it's crazy, but your mind is stupid anyway. Your mind is not a helpful thing to use in spiritual work. It's your spiritual intelligence that we want to actually activate. And that's not really conscious much of the time. It doesn't come through our mentality. It comes mainly through the heart. We access it through the heart, through our feelings. But then we need these extra tools to get it in motion, to shift the energy that's tied up around the story. So it's not hard at all.
Okay, could you walk us through the worksheet?
I can take you through. Yeah, I'll tell you what the 5 stages are in all of the tools, no matter whether we're using a worksheet or the 13 steps CD or a game. We've actually got a board game for radical forgiveness. The 5 steps that we go through are very simple. The first one is to tell the story. What happened? And to tell it from the point of view of the victim, because it's very, very important that we start from where we are. And if we've just been hurt and wounded, or we're still tied up with an old story of a wound, we are in place of non-forgiveness at that point. So we're still a victim, and we're probably very connected to victim consciousness at that point. So we tell the story from the victim's standpoint, without any spiritual overlay, without even any psychological overlay, understanding, excuses, none of that. We just tell it like it happened, and this is what this person did to me, and it hurt. And I'm going to tell you what they did. That's the first stage, and very, very important that we allow that to happen, even if we're telling the story to ourselves as we're doing a worksheet, or if we're telling it to somebody who's like a radical forgiveness coach, a trained radical forgiveness coach who will encourage you to tell your story. The second step or stage is to feel the feelings associated with that story. And again, it goes right back to the original idea that if we don't feel our feelings and we just stuff them, then nothing happens until such time as that comes out in our physical body as a disease, often cancer. So feeling the feelings is very important. It's where the power is, and you cannot heal what you don't feel. So that's an extremely important step. And again, the person needs to feel safe enough to be able to do that, and not to be too scared of their emotions, because a lot of people are. And so you might need to have somebody like a radical forgiveness coach help you go through that process of feeling your feelings and telling the story. And many times that can take a long time. Now, the third step is we're still more or less in traditional forgiveness at this point, but it's basically where we are in a little bit more reflective mood, and we're able to stand back from the situation and look at the facts of what happened as opposed to all of our interpretations of what happened. Because what you'll find is in most people's victim story, it's about 80% interpretation and 20% fact. All the things that we've added to it. Somebody left me, which must mean that they abandoned me, which must mean they don't love me, and I can't be, maybe I'm not lovable, or maybe I'll never ever get anybody who will love me. This is just a repeat of the same old thing. All of that stuff is all part of the story.
What about something like rape?
Well, again, you tell the story, and it's a terrible thing to have happened to you, and you tell it from the point of the victim, and you tell us how angry you are, how violated you are, how this has ruined your life. I'll never be the same again. I'm damaged goods. I can never have a relationship because of what's happened to me. I'm permanently damaged. Those are the kind of interpretations that we tend to add to the facts of what happened.
So you're talking about taking the story out and just getting right down to the facts.
Yes, trying to collapse it down to what is actually real, and what as opposed to what you've added to it that makes it even 20 times more painful than it really is. Okay? So that's the third step. But no, the fourth step, though, is really where the radical forgiveness comes in, and this is the big step. And this is where we say, in spite of everything, in spite of how much I'm hurting about this, I'm willing to be open to the possibility that I actually brought this into my life for a purpose, and that the person who did this thing to me, even if it's a rape, I enrolled them to do it for me, not to me, but for me, so that I could experience this form of separation, this form of suffering, so that I could learn through it and gain for my soul what that soul wanted when it incarnated and decided what it would choose to have done to it in its lifetime. Now, it's almost unbelievable. Especially when you're talking about rape or incest or things like that, it's unbelievable. And that's where the mind cannot wrap itself around that idea. It just can't accept it. But what we find is, and what we found over the years of the workshop, when we say to somebody, okay, I know it hurt, and it seems like the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life, but let's try to be open to this just one possibility. Can you possibly think that there may have been a spiritual purpose behind what happened to you? And most people, once they've gone through stages 1, 2, and 3, can go there. And when they do, everything changes for them. They're all of a sudden no longer a victim. They feel better. They are at peace with themselves. They're empowered again. They're no longer victims. They're no longer trying to make themselves so that unlovable or whatever it is that they have thought themselves to be as a result of that particular incident in their life. And that's the fourth step. That's the radical forgiveness step. And then the fifth step is to find a way to integrate that into the physical body. And we usually do that through breath work or dance or writing on the worksheet or doing something with our voice. Some kind of physical movement. Something physical, yeah. It's like saving it to the hard drive, really, is the way we look at it. The body is like the hard drive of a computer. And the old victim story was lodged in every cell of our body, and we've shifted the energy and moved it, but we want to integrate the new energy into the body, or the new story into the body, so that it becomes permanent. And those are the 5 stages. You have a chapter in your book called Fake It Till You Make It. Uh-huh. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? Well, yes. I mean, as I said at the very beginning there, or the beginning of the 5 stages, that we must begin from where we are, and with forgiveness. And of course, where we are is out of forgiveness. We're in a state of unforgiveness about what has happened. So the only way to approach this work is to say, okay, I'm going to fake it until I make it. I'm going to pretend that I believe that it's a divinely inspired situation here. I'm going to make out that I believe. I'm going to pretend that I believe that it's something that my soul wanted to create for its learning and growing. I'm going to pretend to believe that the person who did this to me, my rapist, if we want to stick with that one, was in my life for a purpose, and I had a hand in enrolling that person to do this to me so that I could learn through the experience. I'm going to fake it until I make it. That's why belief is not required. I don't ask anybody to believe this system. All I ask them to do is try it. And when they try it and know and feel the difference, they say, wow, you know what? This works. And I didn't even have to believe it. The more skeptical people are, the better I like it, because the more dramatic the change is in them.
Well, I'm on the same page with you. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and it's for our own growth and development. I think it's wonderful that you've created this process for people.
Well, I wanted to make that easy. You see, if we try to process that with our mind, as I say, it becomes very difficult to believe it and make sense of it, because we look around the world and it doesn't look like that. The world doesn't look like a divinely inspired spiritual experience. It looks anything but. So I knew I needed to find a way to help people to use this idea, excuse me, and to have it be as simple as possible so that they can use it in their everyday life. Because spirituality is no good unless we can put it into practice easily and on an everyday basis.
A lot of people are probably in agreement with what you're saying and live their lives with that thought, belief, system. Mm-hmm. The tricky point is actually getting to that point where you really get it in your body. That you really see that this person who did harm to you in whatever way was serving a beautiful purpose that has empowered you.
Yeah.
It's moving out of the mental into the nonlinear right brain body experience.
And that's why we had to develop these tools, because I knew that could not be done in one jump. We just can't do it straight from the mentality. So I knew that I had to provide some sort of tool that would make that link for us without us having to worry about what kind of process that we needed to do. So the worksheets are precisely for that reason. And I've noticed that it doesn't work unless you use the tools.
Have you done any guided hypnosis CDs to help people forgive?
What we have is a verbal version of the worksheet. It's called the 13 Steps to Radical Forgiveness, and it's all done on a CD. And you listen to it, and it takes you through those 5 stages that I mentioned before. It says to you, and you listen to it, and it says, what happened? Tell us, explain the story, tell what happened, and feel the feelings, and so on. And then it says, answer yes to the following questions. And no is not an option. You must answer yes, and you must answer it out loud. And so I come up with questions like, are you willing to entertain the possibility that there was a healing opportunity contained in this situation? Yes. Are you willing to see that you may have brought this person into your life in order to give you the experience that your soul wanted? Yes. And so we go through a series of questions like this. It's not hypnotic. It's not mind-altering, so you can do it in the car. I don't find that forgiveness meditation is very helpful, to be perfectly honest. Because again, with meditations, you're trying to use your mind. And that's not what we're trying to use here. We're trying to use our spiritual mind, our spiritual intelligence. So when you say yes to that question, whether you believe it or not, your body hears the resonance of the word yes. And your body is the antenna for your spiritual intelligence. Your spiritual intelligence says, okay, you say yes, good. That means that you have got it. Now we can release this energy. And that's why it's immediate. And that's why when that energy is released, the situation causing the upset in the first place is usually resolved immediately too.
Are the list of questions in your book?
Are the questions in the book? No, because you need to hear those, not read them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was looking at your book going, I don't remember that.
No.
Okay.
No, you have to actually hear those questions. If you were to read them, you would be trying to mediate it through the mind again.
Uh-huh. So they're in your CDs.
Yes.
In your book, you write about the twin ego defense mechanism.
The ego defense mechanisms of repression and projection and suppression, is that what you mean?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean...
I think we should talk a little bit about projection, because we haven't talked about that.
Yes, absolutely. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism. It's one of the things that we do when we don't want to face some part of ourselves that we can't stand. Then we project it onto somebody else, and we do it all the time. It's a natural thing for human beings to do. So we may have, for instance, repressed into our subconscious mind the idea that we are, let's say, selfish, for the want of a better example. But I don't like to think of myself as selfish. So I feel like I'm a very generous person and so on and so forth. But there is a belief down in my subconscious that I am actually selfish. What will then happen is that I'll find other people on which to project that idea, and I will find somebody who's selfish, and then I'll project all my rage and all my judgment on that person. In other words, I'm hurling my selfish part of myself onto this other person, making them wrong for it, and that, in a way, the idea is that makes me feel better about myself. But that is only an illusion. So when we do this work, what we realize is that we are always projecting. But so the lesson is that what we see in somebody else is what we have a trouble accepting in ourselves. So the principle is, if you spot it, you got it.
Is it always true?
Yes. Well, it's true to the extent that the more it upsets you, the more it's yours. I mean, you might see somebody who's selfish, but it not bother you very much.
Right.
But if you see somebody who's selfish and you get mad about it, and you get very judgmental, and you say, what a terrible person she is. She is so selfish. I can't stand people who are selfish. That's when you know that it's you. And it is an opportunity to love that part of yourself, and the way that you do that is to forgive the other person.
So one of the signs is to notice when you're activated, when you have a strong emotional charge.
Absolutely, yes. And of course we do it every day, when we watch the news and we get upset about people, the bankers.
Wait a second, when I watch that guy, Sean Hannity.
Yes.
Am I projecting when I think, God, what a jerk?
Yes. You are projecting, or at least you're seeing in him a part of yourself that's unacceptable to you.
Oh, now you're going to make me angry. I'm not owning that one.
This is not good news in many ways, but it is good news in other ways, because then you know that that's an opportunity for you to heal something within yourself. And if we're endeavoring to be spiritual, that means that we're trying to become whole. And the only way to become whole is to accept every part of ourselves, including every part of our shadow. So every time we see it out there in somebody else, and forgive them for it, you don't have to like them, though. You don't have to like Mr. Hannity, but you just need to say, he's giving me an opportunity to heal a part of me that I've denied, repressed, and projected onto him.
I guess a lot of people could be working on that one, right?
Yeah, it's a big part of the forgiveness process. It's not the only part, but it's a big one, and it's surprising how it helps you to have a bit different perspective on other people and what's out there in the world. Like I say, you don't have to like the person to forgive them. You just recognize that that's a part of you that needs to be healed, and that person is mirroring back to you what it is, and it's not always dead clear what it is that's being mirrored, and you don't really have to know.
You don't have to know?
No, not necessarily. You just say, whatever it is that I'm upset about must be to do with me, So I give thanks to this person for showing me what I need to love and accept in myself. That's it. That's it.
You don't have to think about it at all. You don't have to look at yourself and go, what is it in me that's like?
No.
Oh, I like that.
That's what I say. I've made it so easy. I made these worksheets. All you got to do is read that thing off. It says, whatever I see in this person is what I hate and love in myself. Therefore, it's an opportunity to love that part of me. You just put a little check mark by it, and that's enough. That's how simple it is.
Okay, that's good. How many people have you trained?
Oh dear, I don't know. Around the world, we've got institutes in Germany and Poland, Australia, as well as here. So several hundred active coaches. We've trained lots and lots of people who haven't actually gone out and made a career out of it, but nevertheless have enjoyed doing the program.
Are you conducting workshops?
Oh yeah, all the time. We do them in Atlanta, obviously, because that's where I live. And we do them, in other places around the United States and Canada as well as in Europe and, in other places. But all of that people can find on the website, which is www.radicalforgiveness.com, which is pretty easy to remember. Radical Forgiveness, all one word. We have all sorts of different workshops available, and products and CDs and DVDs and training programs. We've been doing this for a long time now, and there's a lot of stuff that's available. And a lot of these tools that I've been talking about are freely available on the website. No cost at all.
Great. Colin, thank you so much for all the work you're doing and coming on the show today.
Well, thank you.
Once again, Colin's website is radicalforgiveness.com. Hey, we've got a lot of great shows coming up on Theater of the Mind. We'll be talking